What's going on, guys? Check out my latest project. This is my lucky number generator. You can see here, we got some very simple HTML. We got some very simple CSS, and we got some new JavaScript methods I've been working with, experimenting with, and figuring out over here. Well, so basically, yeah, I have one button. You click the button, and we generate our random lucky numbers. Let's take a look. I'm gonna reset it here. So when you first get to the page, or you refresh the page, you just have number sign, number sign, number sign. Click the button, and we get some random numbers. Um, One of the first things I needed to do was generate an array of how many random numbers I wanted, and then in the different ranges that I needed them. And then I also wanted to make sure I didn't have any zeros, any negative numbers, or any repeating numbers. So those are three different challenges I had to work through. Let's refresh again. Let's go to the code. So we'll look at the HTML real fast. Look at this, 20 lines of HTML. I don't really even have a complete typical boilerplate. I just have the basic necessary kind of boilerplate going on here. I have my link to my style sheet right here. I'm going to have the link to my JavaScript right here. We got inside the body. Inside the body, we have, let's look at this. We have an empty line. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, including a comment and my JavaScript. So I have my title, basically. You see that? Lucky numbers. I created a div with an ID of everything because everything that I need is inside this one div. I have my result as an H2. Those are the number sign, number sign, number sign is an H2 element. And then I have my button with an ID of button that just reads generate lucky numbers. And then I end my div. That's literally the HTML for the whole little site. I'll go back to it over here. So here's my H1, my H2, my button. My H2 and my button are inside this div. If we go look at the CSS, you're going to see I have a background color yellow, and I have my div with a border and a background color blue. I changed the H2 font color to white. I changed the background color of the button to green. And I think that's pretty much all I have going on here. I modified the H1 text to be slightly larger. Wanted to make it a little bit more prominent. And I centered everything. I centered the div, I centered the text, I centered the button. So yeah, let's go back to, we can go to the CSS and you can see all of that. Text align center, font size, I made it 60px. My yellow background color. I'm calling the div by everything. It's the only div, so I could have also just said div, but I'm using the ID. And I made it blue. I gave it a width and a height. I gave it a border. I centered it. I centered the text. This is basically the font and the centering and the spacing for the result and the button. I did add some padding and some margin there just to separate the button from the result text a little bit. I have so that when you kind of highlight the button, it turns into pointer, so the user will know it's the button. And that's it. So the CSS and the HTML, very simple. No problem there. Beginner friendly. And now if we go to the JavaScript, So I'm calling this my version 0.24. There's still some other things I want to add and do with this, but I created two constant variables at the top here. I'm using the DOM document get element by ID method. And so by ID of the result and the button, which I named that H2 text, I gave an ID of result. So we're calling that here and creating a JavaScript variable lucky numbers with that. The button is going to be my button. I kept that simple. And then, so first thing we created those variables, and then I'm turning one of those variables, the button, into a button. I'm initializing it as a button. And when that button is clicked, we're calling the getValues function. And the whole rest of this program, this little JavaScript we're running here, it's all in that function. You can see up there, function getValues. I named my function getValues. And it comes all the way down here. I console log a bunch of things to do tests. But so this whole JavaScript program is written as one function. I got a couple variables, a button, and a function. It's running all of this. Right here, my console log clicked, so that as soon as the button is clicked, if you open up console and it says clicked, you know your button is working. That's a very common test to make sure your buttons are working. Inside the function, I'm creating an empty array with the name values. I'm naming an empty array. And then we go into a for loop. It took me a while to figure this out. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I needed to do, but I wasn't sure how I was going to do it at first for a while. Um, I ended up using a for loop to create the values for my empty array. That's basically what's going to happen inside this function, the first part of this function. This whole project, too, is really meant to experiment and better understand the math random um, method, math random function. And but after I decided to use the for loop, I needed to learn how to use it. So we have three expressions inside the for loop. Let's see, check my notes here. So our first expression is going to be the let I equal 0. Our second expression is I less than 5. And our third expression is I plus plus. So what's going on here is the first expression is setting this operator value to 0. So when we start our for loop, I equals 0. And we want our for loop to run continuously as long as I is less than 5. So we want this loop to run 5 times basically. And every time the loop runs, we're going to add 1 plus 1 to the value I. So when it runs one time it's 0, when it runs again it's 1, when it runs again it's 2, when it runs again it's 3. So that's like our counter. So that's how the for loop knows when it's done. Every time it adds, and once we get to 5, then the for loop is going to stop doing whatever's inside the for loop. So I need 5 random values. We're going to use this for loop to create our 5 random values. Once we have our 5 random values, the for loop is going to stop. We're creating another value. I named new value. Let new value equal math.floor math.random times 70 plus 1. So what this is going to do is this is going to create a changeable new value with a random number value in between 1 and 70. It took me a while to figure out how to get the range I needed. I needed numbers between 1 and 70, and I wanted them to be positive. If you Google search how to use math.random and math.floor, we'll get into math.floor in a minute, but if you Google search how to do this, how to get numbers within a range that you want, Google was telling me to multiply math.random with 1 minus whatever the high end value is. So if I wanted numbers between 1 and 70, Google was telling me to multiply math.random with 1 minus 70 to get my range. And then we would have to multiply that with a negative 1 to turn it into a positive, because we don't want negative numbers. And then we're going to add 1 if you want to include, if you want it to be inclusive of the range and not exclusive of the range. If it was exclusive to the range, then we would have 0 to 69, I think, or something like that. But we need the 1. We don't want the 0, and we want to get to the full 70. So that's why we're adding plus 1 at the end. So a lot of this whole project was just trying to understand that, how to understand math.random to get what I want. Math.random, though, is going to give us a decimal. And that's why we have math.floor. It's going to round us to our closest whole integer. So one little line that took me forever to understand because I'm new. But this is how I finally got it to work. I simplified it. I got rid of those negative numbers. How I have it written now is giving us positives, and it's giving me what I want in the range that I need. And then once we create that value, that new value, we're going to use the push method. The push method will add something to your array. So we're calling our array values.push new value. So we're going to add the new value to our array with this line right here. And it's going to do that 5 times. So we're going to end up with 5 elements, I guess. 5 new values inside of our empty array. And that we're ending the for loop there. And then we need a sixth. We need a sixth number. I think, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go back to that. Yeah, we need a 6 number total. But we need a different range. So instead of doing this I is less than 6 and getting all of our numbers in this one, because this is giving us in a range from 1 to 70, we need that last value to be from 1 to 25. So at the end of all that, outside of the for loop, we're just creating one more. We're calling that one the mega. We're running, this looks very similar. We just changed the range. But this is going to give us a positive whole integer from 1 to 25. And we're going to run the same values.push mega. Mega is what we named this last value. So for a while, it took me a couple days to get to just there. And I was happy with that. And then, what was I still getting? I was still getting doubles. So with just kind of perfecting my math random functions, I was getting positive numbers in the range that I wanted. But sometimes when I clicked that button to get my random numbers, I was still getting doubles. And we don't want repeating numbers or doubles. We want all the numbers to be different. I was getting doubles in my result with at least every 10 iterations. So if I click the button 10 times, I would get doubles. But I don't get doubles anymore. I had to figure out how to clean my array of doubles. So I did that down here, still inside the main get values function, but outside of the for loop. Naming a new variable, a changeable new variable. I don't know if this one has to be constant or changeable, but I'm just letting it be changeable. Um, and I'm giving this new value uh, it's basically going to be an array made from a new set of the values array. And what this is going to do, the new set method, is all of this right here is going to create a new array set with only unique values. It's not going to have any repeating values. I was searching, Googling, YouTubing. I was looking on all the web development websites for information of how I could clean an array, basically. And it was kind of hard. I had multiple answers staring at me right in my face, and I just wasn't sure how to apply them because I had never done this before, and because none of the examples matched my use case. So that can be really confusing to try to understand something new when the example is not related to what you're trying to do. And finally, I think a YouTube video showed me this array dot from new set method, and I was like, wow, that makes sense. I'm going to use this. I test ran it outside of this whole program. I made basically just created two arrays, and one purposely I gave double values and tried to make a new set with no double values out of that, without any function or anything going on, just calling the arrays. And it did what I wanted it to do, so then I applied that to this project. I tested outside of the project to see if it would work or to see if it would do what I needed it to do. And so I'm creating a set with no doubles. So if there's a set with doubles and this creates a set with no doubles, then this set will have less elements. This won't be a set of 6. If there's doubles and it gets rid of the doubles, then this will be a set of 5. So then I can use an if statement that if the length of values unique dot length is less than 5, run this, basically run the get values function again. So this will create a new array. If the first output of the get values function gives me an array with doubles, and then I create a values unique from that set, and that's less than 5 because it had a double in it, then basically this is going to tell the get values function to run again until we get a set of all unique values in our values array. So that worked out great. I thought it was going to be more complicated than that, but we're cleaning our array with literally 3 lines of JavaScript right here. That just worked out amazingly. And then now that we have our values, this line right here, lucky numbers dot enter text, we're using the enter text function to change our number sign to the values from our values array. And that's going to print that to the screen for the user. And that's pretty much done. Down here I have a bunch of console logs that I use kind of for testing and just to compare and see the values that I was getting to know that the function had reached the whole end. And yeah, very simple. This is only 37 lines of JavaScript now that I erased all my notes and everything that I have in here. But it's doing what I want it to do. We can go back to it right here. Boom, boom, boom. We got our lucky number generator. I haven't made this live yet. Um, probably pretty soon. Maybe by the end of the day. Maybe by tomorrow. I'll put this on my GitHub and make this live. I'll probably also post the code. All of the code, all 3 pages, will be in on my Kofi. If you guys want to go check it out on my Kofi. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, and thanks for following my self-taught coding education.